Greetings, fellow citizens of Disneyland. Brickey here. Today's adventure, our summer 2021 designer walkthrough tour of Fantasyland, which is so huge we had to divide it up into two different parts. Yesterday we explored the entire eastern half. Today we'll be doing the entire center of Fantasyland, looking at all the design details, what's changed since our last designer walkthrough tour back in May when the park had just been open for a few days. And when possible, as always, we're going to look back at some of Fantasyland's history. Jumping in, you can see we have this construction project that's right on the edge of the Fantasyland Theater, which not too long ago, this was the big area that they were using for the Jungle Cruise world premiere, which looked a little something like this back in July of this summer. Not a big deal to shut off the Fantasyland Theater because the theater currently is closed. Mickey and the Magical Map has not returned, and interesting if it ever will return. So putting this barricade here, really no big deal because this is part of the park that there's not really a specific reason to go back and to explore.
Entertainment has been missing from the park for a while. It'll be so fascinating to see when the Fantasyland Theater reopens, as well as the Troubadour Tavern.
In 1985, this was originally the Videopolis Theater. The theater holds about 1,800 guests, so small in the scale of an outdoor amphitheater, but a pretty decent stage for a theme park. If you could fill up the Fantasyland Theater 10 shows in one day, then you will have matched a sold-out Honda Center by comparison.
We did see this area in the middle of the summer get converted over to a Hollywood movie premiere for the world premiere of the Jungle Cruise, which brought none other than The Rock himself, the People's Champion, to Disneyland along with his co-host Emily Blunt. It was fascinating to see this area right here get transformed into a Hollywood premiere.
Disneyland is so efficient with their use of space, turning this train path into a fully functional step and repeat media junket effortlessly overnight and then back the next day as if it had never happened demonstrates how the park has been carved into perfect human flow, regardless of where the humans are going and what their purpose is once they get there. I personally will never be able to see this path the same way again.
Definitely a very interesting thing to capture inside of the history of Disneyland. Not the first movie premiere, certainly not the last. This is something that has happened historically from time to time.
Yeah, I guess you could say that the Toontown station is a drastic improvement from the Videopolis station, the original train station in this spot that replaced the Fantasyland depot from yesterday's video, which is a topic we'll have to fully break down in a future, less busy Fantasyland update.
Just like once this area didn't exist, once on the other side of that berm, Toontown, and then decades later, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge would keep expanding the perimeter of the western end of Disneyland, which since the beginning of the park, the western side of the park has been the most ever evolving. When they built the east side, it's butted right up on the edge of harbor. Therefore, it hasn't had the space to fully grow and mature. But the Wild West, or the western side of Disneyland, has been through so many transformations because that was the area they always had the most amount of space to keep growing and expanding.
Isn't it crazy, friend, how we went from having to be 6 feet apart at all time to now literally 6 inches apart? This somehow is always congested with strollers and human confusion. Adding in this massive construction site is doing no favors at all for crowd control at Disneyland. Sometimes they are the masters of it. Sometimes they do things that I just don't understand.
What is already a very narrow passage inside of Disneyland has become even narrower with the advent of this wall coming out for the paver project of new stones they'll be putting on the other side. This has always been a wild area where they've put strollers and various other things. Now the passage is even tighter. It's going to be fun to see how all this comes together and what it looks like with the new stones.
This all leaves me with one question. Who approved this? And why did they think it was a good idea now?
Wild spot, wild time for a project like that. Of course, when Disneyland and Fantasyland is feeling too congested, too crowded, there's always outer, simpler paths to use where normally you can get a little bit more space to yourself. This little corridor on the edge of Small World, taking you back to classic Fantasyland, is one of my favorite passages in the entire park.
I do adore how many different ways there are to get to wherever you want to go inside of Disneyland. The choose your own adventure aspect does make navigating the park for first timers or even for people that have been there 600 times like myself, makes it very adventurous when you always feel like there's multiple ways to go where you need to go. When we explored this part of the park back in May, Storybook Land canal boats were not operational, which added so much silence and quiet to this corner of the park, which is normally just overflowing with people in all different directions. Seeing how tightly people are packed into the standby line for Storybook, it's no wonder why this wasn't open back in May. But man, does it add so many more people here. Also, with the idea that the Matterhorn is fully returned, you get people coming in from the eastern edge as well, making this crossroad one of the busiest crossroads in all of Disneyland. And sure, it's crowded, and that can be annoying if you're trying to ride on Storybook, but I would take this over pandemic and isolated, lonely, bizarro Disneyland any day of the week.
Very, very hard to believe that's the same attraction, same spot at the beginning of May when we saw the Storybook canal boats close. As they have come back online, we have seen a lot more crowds, a lot more congestion in that corner.
I feel it's often overlooked Matterhorn's many contributions to Fantasyland. It not only adds a more adult-themed ride, but a great soundscape and a visual barrier from Tomorrowland. It quietly is a real MVP of Fantasyland in so many different ways. The energy and layering of Storybook Land is just hard to match. I cherish the spots of land where multiple attractions live and cohabitate, sharing the same space. Looking back at this attraction's past, you can really understand all the heavy visual storytelling that the berm of Storybook and Casey Jr. are providing to keep Fantasyland's different neighborhoods isolated, but yet very connected. When we see this area isolated back in May, simply, it's just not the same. Let's have a quiet moment and just enjoy this plot of land doing so much heavy lifting. When you contrast today's footage, full of life, to this historic footage back in May, it proves that Disney makes beautiful parks, but me, you, and the cast members, we're the ones that make the magic. Well, the crowds have indeed returned. Hold on, pit stop. Love this little mosaic here in front of Dumbo. But as I was saying, the crowds have definitely returned, making Fantasyland once again one of the most hectic and crazy spots to navigate your way through in the entire Disneyland resort. Over to the left, we can see that Mr. Toad has a generous amount of people waiting to get inside of it. When we did this back in May, I was literally able to come around this corner, notice the stickers all around the ground, notice the complete lack of people, and that Toad was just a walk-on. I'm never going to turn my back on a Disneyland walk-on. It is such a rare oddity that I had to pause the tour and do a little rip and a ride through, because how can you say no when literally there are only 2 people in line in front of you? And I guess if the park was empty because it was just a slow day, that feels like a total win. But when the park is empty because we can't be around our friends and it's stressful to go out in public and out-of-state citizens of Disneyland aren't welcome to come in, it just ruins the exclusive nature that May possess. Like, it just was different out of sake of being weird, not because of some lucky thing. Like, it was always a reminder that the world was feeling fundamentally kind of broken. But now when we get back into these crowds, I just have a better appreciation for being around people. And now when it becomes empty again, I'll have another appreciation because it'll be empty because it's a slow day, not because it's a sad day. Let's look back at just how empty this area was back in May. You can see a lot less people coming in here where Fantasyland tapers in its pathways for entry into Sleeping Beauty's castle. Now it is full of people, and the attractions are operating in the way that they were designed to. Each attraction has a courtyard out front that holds people in the standby line waiting for their turn to get into their adventure with Snow White or Peter Pan. But what is returned that I'm the most excited about is my favorite shop in all of Disneyland, Ye Old Castle Holiday Shop. I love the holidays. I love that I can come in here all year long, notice the skull on the mailbox, and take in a fresh breath of the holiday season. Let's step in and do a little mini shop tour, shall we? Damn you, Adam the Woo, always getting your words in my head. Yoda Christmas Shop is such a great escape from the rest of the park, but also escape from whatever time of the year it is, because inside of here, all year long, it's always the holidays. I love looking at the different ornaments. The more they're directly related to the park, the more I'm a fan of. And then there's all kinds of holiday obscurity so that you could tie your holidays into some of your favorite attractions and places inside of Disneyland. The tunnels that flank Sleeping Beauty to the left and the right are my preferred way to go around Fantasyland. It's very seldom that I actually go over the bridge. One, it's normally very congested, and two, you always get in the way of somebody's perfect pick. But when you take the outer pass, you have the ability to move at a different pace, to take in more beautiful Disneyland ambiance, and generally just have a better time when you're in the park, removed away from everybody else, taking in all the sights and sounds of these two paths that I refer to as the outer hub. All along the northern edge of the hub, there is a pass system to get you from land to land and out of the crowds. Your wishes will help children everywhere is printed on Snow White's wishing well, because every coin or dollar that gets thrown inside the wishing well or any fountain at Disneyland eventually works its way to Children's Hospital of Orange County. So it's true. Every time you throw a coin in and make a wish at Disneyland, a dream comes true somewhere for someone in need.
Now, if you remember back in May, this thoroughfare that I was on, this was used for the overflow for the Peter Pan attraction. Due to physical distancing, they needed to keep everybody spread apart, which meant that Peter Pan exited out into Snow White's grotto.
Here we see a woman taking a photo of her Minnie Mouse princess costume in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle. Here we see a dad taking a photo of his son. Here we see couples sorting out their photo strategy. We see the Disneyland photographer just covered by people trying to get the perfect pic. I love the creativity that you can see in this part of the park, whether it's people doing a TikTok dance, making a photo for their Instagram, showing up in amazing outfits and costumes and bounding to sort of fit into the blend of Disneyland just right. Like, I love the creativity that you see from fans in this moment of Disneyland's history. Here we see Milan hanging out, talking to some young children and blowing their mind. But once we come over to the right, we see a bunch of young adults in very different costumes and outfits, just trying to get that perfect photo. I just love the creativity of fans in this very unique time in Disneyland's history, where social media has 100% given the theme parks a whole new popularity and way that fans feel connected to them that never ever existed in its history. I mean, look what you and I are doing right now.
Do you have any pieces of meat? Hello? Yes, you. Do you have any pieces of meat?
Any pieces of you?
Yes, on your skin.
No, I don't have you tattooed on me. Been wasting away.
You should remedy that.
I'll get right on that.
Perfect. A really big one of just my face.
Thank you for the suggestion.
You're very welcome. Very gracious, I know.
She's the best. That's my absolute favorite character in the park. She always breaks me down and makes me blush. I love it so much.
The Old Plaza Gardens, which was transformed over into Fantasy Fair, it's a really interesting spot of Fantasyland. Very removed from everything else that's happening, but it is such a great getaway spot. I love walking through these paths and corridors, always kind of stopping to take a moment to just enjoy being near Sleeping Beauty's castle, but being very, very far away from the crowds. It's definitely a favorite spot of mine inside of the park because normally it's so isolated.
This was an area that was being used for the overflow of Snow White. I know, a little confusing, Snow White on the Fantasy Fair side, Peter Pan on the Snow White side, but this was what the park was like in May of 2021 when everybody had to be spread out. So they used this outer hub of Sleeping Beauty's castle to absorb the extra weight of guests. An area that I'll tell you is one of my absolute all-time favorites. If you don't walk this path, I have to wonder, are you walking the park correctly?
If for some reason you're not using this outer path, I highly, highly recommend next time, skip the bridge, go to the far left, go to the far right. You will not be sorry that you chose to go on this adventure.
When we think about how congested the park is on the other side, why wouldn't you walk on the outer rim of Sleeping Beauty's castle? And this little statue is always here to reward you.
So many fun details inside of this inner courtyard of Sleeping Beauty's castle. The carousel horse heads here on top of these retail fixtures just adds so much more fun to the shopping area. This area through here has so much fantastic detailing that we'll have to get into in a slower season of updating you to everything that's new inside of Fantasyland. Can I take back what I just said about how grateful I am for the crowds returning? Because when I get stuck in this little area, I just want to be out of Fantasyland as fast as I possibly can. Let's step over to where the sword and the stone is. Let's look at this front planter and see, yes, girl who argued with me in front of Matterhorn, they do change the flowers each season, and I've got footage to prove it. So mind your own business and get out of my conversation, because I'm telling you, they move all the flowers seasonally at Disneyland. And why are you listening to my conversation anyways, girl at the Matterhorn? And by the way, this is beef that I'm still carrying around from like 2017. The carousel looks so beautiful. This is the oldest attraction inside of Disneyland because it predates Disneyland. Originally, the carousel was a part of a theme park in Toronto, Ontario. And because we talked about the Fantasyland Theater, did you know that the spot where Pinocchio now resides was the original Fantasyland Theater, but it was a much, much smaller, different thing than the amphitheater we have today.
On the last time we did this, we broke down all of those buildings over there and how it's just a jigsaw of different designs to make it look so much more full, so much more like the European village that they were going for when they rethemed all of Fantasyland in 1983.
Dumbo, one of the few attractions at Disneyland that has actually changed where it resides. This was actually much further over to our west originally. The teacups and King Arthur's Carousel being the other attractions. It sort of got shuffled around to get the perfect flow for Fantasyland. This is one of those attractions that I've only ever rode one time because, yeah, I'm that brave. But I just always have to stop and look at it. It is so beautiful. This whole corner of Fantasyland is beautiful with all the flowers, the families, the happiness. Back in May, it was so much more quiet, less people here, and it is nice to see Fantasyland back to being full of fantasies, full of families, full of people having fun in what I would have to say is probably the most popular, most busiest spot in all of Disneyland. It's the most congested. It has the most attractions per any land inside of the resort. And there's a part of me that always comes over here and dreams if I could just walk up those 3 stairs, go up to the chalet, get on that sky bucket, and get to see it for the first time ever, all from a bird's eye view as I work my way through a hole inside of the Matterhorn and eventually find myself in Tomorrowland. Man, that's a dream of mine.
Friends, on the edge of Fantasyland, I hope you enjoyed our summer 2021 walkthrough, looking at all the design details, how everything has changed since the park reopened in May. Can't wait to do this again with you for our fall visit and see what changes have come about as the holidays not invade, that sounds too brutal, as the holidays finally make their way to Disneyland after taking 2020 off. Going to be so many updates over in the Small World area, and who knows what else we might find. Definitely some magic on the castle as it gets ready to celebrate the holidays, but it'll be fun to see what details we can discover the next time we get together. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a comment below, give a video a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel to go on all these Disneyland walkthrough designer tours with me, and also hang out with all the fun live streams that we do, walking through the park, giving you a window to the magic when you can't be here. To all my friends at Club 1313, thank you for making today's video possible. And friends, until the next time I see you hanging out on the edge of Fantasyland, I'll see you back here on the channel with more Disneyland fun.